Before the Civil War ended, there were slave codes. States made laws prohibiting slaves from owning guns. After President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, and after the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution abolishing slavery was adopted, and the Civil War ended in 1865, the states persisted in prohibiting blacks, now freemen, from owning guns under laws renamed the Black Codes. Maybe you've heard of them already. They did this on the basis that blacks were not citizens and thus did not have the same rights, including the right to keep and bear arms protected in the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution as white people. This view was specifically articulated by the U.S. Supreme Court in its infamous 1857 decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford to uphold slavery. This is episode 677.
BlackManWithAGun.com, Ken Blanchard's Pro-Gun Podcast.
What's up, brothers and sisters? It's been a minute since I've been on the microphone, and I'm going to explain that at the very end of this podcast. So if you stick around and listen, you will hear the details, the gruesome details of what's going on in your friend and brother from another mother's life. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the Dred Scott decision. Dred Scott, a name you don't hear that often. My grandfather was named Dred. He was a slave born in Virginia. Was purchased by John Emerson in Missouri in 1820. Emerson then traveled with Scott to Fort Armstrong, Illinois, and from there to Fort Snelling, Wisconsin. Both Illinois and Wisconsin prohibited slavery. Scott and his wife stayed in Wisconsin when Emerson returned to Missouri. Since Emerson leased their services to other white people in Wisconsin, he violated the Missouri Compromise, as well as other laws against slavery in that region. When Emerson moved to Louisiana, Scott and his wife joined them. Their daughter was born in a steamboat on the Mississippi River, which technically made her a free person because she was born in free territory. Emerson soon returned to Wisconsin, but his wife took Scott and his wife back to Missouri when Scott served in the Seminole War. Emerson ultimately died in Iowa, and his widow inherited Scott, whose services she continued to lease to others. Emerson's widow rejected an attempt by Scott to buy his family's freedom, which led to legal action. Scott argued that his wife and he were legally emancipated because of their residence in free territories. Missouri courts had ruled in favor of similarly positioned slaves, but his case was initially dismissed on a minor procedural ground. Eventually, the jury did rule in his favor, but Emerson's widow appealed. She had moved to Massachusetts by then and given Scott to her brother, John F.A. Sanford. Upon appeal, the Missouri Supreme Court reversed earlier decisions in this area and ruled that Scott was not required to be emancipated because he had failed to sue for his freedom when he was living in a free state. When Sanford moved to New York, Scott resumed his legal action there in federal court since diversity jurisdiction applied. So what does all that mean? On March 6, 1857, in the case of Dred Scott versus John Sanford, United States Supreme Court Chief Justice Roger B. Taney ruled that African Americans were not and could not be citizens. This has reverberated into centuries of stuff that we think about ourselves as people of color, that America is not our home, that's for other people. It stems from this. Taney wrote that the founding fathers' words in the Declaration of Independence, quote, all men were created equal, were never intended to apply to blacks. Have you ever been told something so many times and that you didn't know the origin of it and you just take it on as fact? Yeah. This conditioning is also some of the reasons why many people of color are not very patriotic, because we have a history that stems back to this time when we were not accepted to be Americans. So if you've been denied something, it's easy to be negative about it. Not giving an excuse for anybody. I'm just telling you where the origins of this come from. And those of us who still love our country, in spite of what's going on, have gone past that. See, back in the day, blacks could not vote, travel, or even fall in love and marry of their own free will, rights granted according to the declaration by God to all. It was the culmination of 10 years of court battles, Dred Scott's fight to live and to be recognized as a free man. The High Court's decision went even further, declaring laws that restricted slavery in new states or sought to keep a balance between free and slave states, such as the Missouri Compromise, were unconstitutional. In essence, black Americans, regardless of where they lived, were believed to be nothing more than commodities. Consumers. The Taney Court was dominated by pro-slavery judges from the South. Of the 9, 7 judges had been appointed by pro-slavery presidents. 5, in fact, came from slave-holding families. The decision was viewed by many as a victory for the Southern slaveocracy and a symbol of the power of the South had over the highest court. The dramatic ripple effect of Dred Scott. By almost all historians, agree that this was one of the worst racially based decisions ever handed down by the United States Supreme Court. And it reached across the states and territories. It sent shivers through the North and the free African American community. Technically, no black was free of re-enslavement. What has this to do with the Second Amendment? What has this to do with the right to keep and bear arms today in 2021? Well, we do nothing on its own. Everything has an origin. Everything has a beginning. If you have been conditioned, if you have been lied to, if you have been misled, if you've just been ignorant, it's easy to manipulate. It's easy to influence. It's easy to change, positively and negatively. Some of the reasons why folks don't claim this country as their own, don't want to fight for the rights that they have already. 1, they don't know that they're their rights as well. 2, there is, since 1857, been a precedent for some people to make them feel, to make others think that this country is not theirs, that they have no part of the process, and that it is easy to negate somebody who doesn't know that they have the right to it. Think about that the next time you argue. Think about that the next time you condemn. Think about that the next time you wonder why something works for them and not for us. Actually, it's for all. Because all men were created equal. Justice delayed is justice denied. It's a legal maxim. It means that if legal redress or equitable relief to an injured party is available, but it is not forthcoming in a timely fashion, it is effectively the same as having no remedy at all. You know, the last line in a Woody Guthrie classic that you might remember goes a little something like this. Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. Brothers and sisters, black, white, yellow, pink, multicolored, all nationalities, genders, orientations. If you are pro-Second Amendment, let's band together. Let's not fight each other online. Let's not diss each other in private or in open. Let's do better. Because the nation that we have, the land that we have, is fragile. The freedom that we enjoy right now is fragile. While we are bickering, while we are trying to one-up one another, you're allowing the enemy to grow. You're allowing the enemy to posture, to position, to take advantage of our weaknesses and are not having unity. And this is not something that you don't know. I'm just here to remind you. Since 2014, I have been a member of the Crossbreed holster family. If you carry concealed, get a holster that supports not only your firearm, but your freedom, the faith, and this brother with a try-it-free lifetime guarantee. Crossbreedholsters.com. Crossbreedholsters.com. Hey, if you are into hunting, I got a new podcast on BlanchardNetwork.com. It's called Guns and Cornbread. It's hosted by Larry Case. Larry is just getting into podcasting, so his first couple of shows, they're all pretty short, under 15 minutes. But as we get along, they'll get a little longer, and he's going to talk about all kind of things. But give him a shout, give him a listen. Check out Guns and Cornbread, the podcast. It's on BlanchardNetwork.com.
Direct from our newsroom in Washington, in color.
Hey, this is going to be pretty hot and pretty sad at the same time. Earlier in the year, I was preparing to become a lobbyist locally here in the nation's capital. But life happened, and I'm going to explain what happened. So I'm not going to be doing any lobbying anytime soon. That's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time away from the household. And right now I am working as a caregiver for my missus, which I'll explain. So the lobbying thing's going to be put on hold for a minute, okay? You might not know it, but on May 17th, my wife of 30 years went in for brain tumor surgery removal. The brain tumor was non-cancerous. It happened because she was having headache issues and unexplained things happening to her, and I just thought she was crazy. She had retired about a year earlier and was loving life at home. Was driving me nuts, of course. And every day there was a new pain, a new issue. And I thought, go to the doctor, doggone it. And she would go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, well, your blood pressure is okay. Your blood cholesterol is blah, blah, blah. And nobody seemed to find out that she had a tumor until she went back to her old doctor who said, all right, I'll order an MRI for you. And he came back the worst poker player of all time. On the virtual interview, he was looking over the charts that he had sent me, and I was reading them. A wannabe doctor at one time, veterinarian. I understood some of the language, but I didn't want to tell my wife what I had saw. I wanted him to say it, and he was choked up. This small grapefruit-sized tumor was in the front of her head and a part of your brain that does a lot of your executive decisions. And they said, well, you need a specialist before you start getting seizures and blackouts and blindness and a whole bunch of other things. And my wife was really good because we are people of faith. So we had a family meeting and decided to keep it personal, not tell too many people, especially not some of our relatives that are prone to go off on nothing. The doctors, the neurosurgeon, said, we're going to go and make this as less invasive as possible. There's 2 ways we can do it. They gave my wife some really good stuff. They had a really good relationship. Everything was looking all right. May 17th happened, and there was a downward slide. They hadn't even removed the tumor. They had just released it from what was holding on to it. And if I can imagine in my head, this tumor, though not cancerous, was alive. It was an aggressive tumor. It did not want to die. So it moved, and it caused my wife stroke-like symptoms. So after a couple of days when she was supposed to be released to come home and wait for the second surgery to actually remove this bad boy, she was in ICU. And as time went on, a month went by after the second surgery, and they removed most of the tumor. They had some parts they couldn't take out because it was in critical areas. But they thought that should be all right. That should be good enough. And at least that's what they led me to believe anyway. 30 more days in a rehab facility, which didn't rehab her. After that, they kicked her to the curb and sent her home. I've been a caregiver for the last 7 days. And before that, I was in limbo, not really knowing what's going to happen with so many things. And so the podcast episodes for this podcast have been non-existent. there's been a lot on my mind. My wife is home now, like I said, and she cannot walk. She cannot talk. She had only one leg that she could use up until a couple of days ago. She is being fed through her stomach, a G-tube, they call it. So I am changing her. I am feeding her. I'm administering medication. I am frantically checking for post-pneumonia things. She had pneumonia when they released her. You know, the list just keeps coming. And then just a few days ago, they called me back from the big hospital that removed the tumor and said that this type of tumor, now that we've checked it out, will regrow unless we radiate it. I said, you thought it wasn't cancer. No, but it's an aggressive, an angry tumor. I thought that just fits my wife. She would have an angry tumor. So when she's well enough, in about 3 months, we'll be going back to the hospital for a month-long, every day, 30-minute session to eradicate this predator in her brain. What has it done for me? It has humbled me. It has broke me. It has made me realize what's important in life. Or better yet, it's made me more keenly aware of what's important. I've always known. I've tried to walk that line for a long time now. You may have seen it on Facebook. I've been making some small posts on my YouTube channel on the personal side of things, just to answer a few questions. And a really good friend of ours, Nick Thompson, created a GoFundMe, which at first I balked at because my wife would go crazy if she knew that I was begging for money for her. But you also know that I'm a man of faith, and the Lord told me to let this be. Why? Because there are people, maybe even you, have already donated to this GoFundMe thing as an outpour of your love of trying to help me. Because I had bills that I didn't even know I had. They're just running. They're just coming. I mean, it cost $385 a day minus the taxes just for the hospital. The rehab days bill that are not covered by the insurance. Now, I thought I had the good government insurance, right? But they have stuff for like 30 calendar days in a year. There was like a little stipulation that you hope you never run out of. Well, and the bills keep coming. But somebody, maybe even you, has been donating money for the last couple of days, and I just paid a big giant bill with it. So thank you if you're listening. I'm not destitute yet. I'm not broke. My daughter was like, what's going on? Are we in trouble? And I said, no, but homie is stressed. And, you got money for mortgages and utilities and that kind of stuff. And this extra stuff was just like way extra. So I was sweating it. But, well, you know. So if you are listening and you donated to Nick's GoFundMe, I'm going to tell you in my own voice, even though I've said it on 2 YouTube videos and on all my Facebook page, thank you very much. But in other news, let me tell you what I did. Because I love this medium so much, that I created a network of shows. My son already had his Warriorcast podcast. I already was doing 3 other shows. I had If I Died Tonight, which I changed to While You're Waiting, which will probably go away soon. But this whole network thing gives me joy, too, because I'm promoting somebody else. I have Indian Motorcycle Radio. I have a new host. Her name is Teresa, and Teresa is pretty cool, actually. And I want to have a family-friendly thing. I have 6 shows on there now, I believe, or 5. And I'm going to get maybe even a couple of more that are different. And we'll see where it goes. I like producing other people's stuff. I like showing them the things that work. And since they're still basically my shows, I don't mind editing them with the new host and making them sound better and putting them on our Facebook page. We have a Blanchard Network Facebook page, a Blanchard Network Instagram account. And of course, BlanchardNetwork.com is where you can see all my handiwork. And I'm growing this thing and I'm having fun with it. And in my mind, I'm going to become the next Ted Turner. But even if I don't, I'll have some good shows. I'll have people that I'm working with. I even got a guy who rides an Indian who is doing a YouTube channel for the Indian Motorcycle Radio. And who knows where this thing could go. But you don't care about that, right? You're talking about guns, the Second Amendment, the history, and all the stuff that I've been doing for the last 14 years. Right? But that's a little unfair because maybe you do care about what's happening with your friend and brother from another mother. I was telling my daughter about the people who listen to this show, about the people who I've met in my life, about the people who support our gun rights and that I've managed to be in the midst of for the last 30 years. She was like, that's a lot of people. I said, I know. And I didn't think this thing would last as long as it has. I've watched a couple of young people grow up online. Yeah. One guy got engaged. I remember when he was about 15, sending me music. Another person I know got married and has a family now since we've met. I mean, the circle of life. I've watched it online through my audience. The one thing that I've learned that sticks in my head, that keeps me going, is the people in our community, the people in our country, the people on this show. You make a difference. You believe in freedom. You believe in America. You believe in the right things. You care, and that's more than so many other people. You cared when nobody else did. You understood when nobody else did. You got it. This is your friend and your brother from another mother, the Reverend Ken Blanchard, who has rocked and rolled online for 14 years through this podcast. Officiated at about 15 weddings. One funeral. Been the ear, the voice of reason, and the pastor of patriots, pistoleros, and paladins for 5 people who thought about ending their lives. This is the same guy who didn't always have the right answer, didn't always say the right things, that was caught up in his own mess. But when it was related to you, I did the right thing. Our country is still going through its evolution. It's still going through growing pains. It's still trying to find the best of itself. That relies with you and me. You know, as we circle these wagons, let's not shoot at each other. There are plenty enemies outward. In the quiet time, sometimes we fire fiery darts at each other. There are plenty foes to freedom. There are a whole bunch of frenemies on social media. There are people who pretend and don't quite know where they belong yet. Let's figure it out sooner than later. And just in case nobody has told you this today, I love you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Until the next time you hear my voice, or see me on YouTube or Facebook, call a brother if you want to. Email me at blackmanwiththegun@gmail.com. Shalom, baby.
Until next time, friends.
To keep in touch with Ken and his cause, head over to blackmanwithagun.com.